Always.
Hello guys, my name is Nelson,
My name is Bruno Mello.
and today, as a new topic, as you could see, plenty poker. So, Bruno, what we got to say about plenty poker?
Plenty poker. All right. We're starting with the, I don't know if it's smaller or simpler
Simpler, I would
practices,
say.
but this is a very simple practice that it will feed into the backlog refinement or backlog grooming, right?
Grooming,
Awesome.
as we
And
could see on the market.
very fun practice.
Alrighty, so what we need to understand, and I think that is pretty simple, but it's not easy when you got different point of view when the people are doing the plenty
Definitely.
poker, because some people might think that some tasks might be easier for other ones.
Yep.
And maybe you have some concerns and constraints about because people might say I can do that faster, or I don't think that is too complicated to do. And at the same time, people might think that it might be harder, and then you might have some
Yeah, I understand.
issues.
Yeah, I agree. What I mean by simple is simple to learn, but not simple to actually practice and live it, right? But very effective, very effective. And so we will be covering how it was created for development teams and how can we apply this to operations teams that handle processes um, instead of product developments.
Okay, so let's say, as I know, maybe Bruno the same. We had two different types of plenty pokers, right? We got cards, as you can see in here, with
Yeah, the
numbers,
physical ones.
and then we got applications that people use
Yeah.
on the smartphones that have the same results. I cannot remember the name of the who created the plenty poker, but I know there's a. Do you remember the name of the
No,
person?
I don't.
Well,
I
anyways,
never heard.
but
I
we
don't know who
got
created this.
but we got two different types. People that are co-located on the same room.
Yep.
They might be using the cards
Both.
or maybe the cell
Both.
phone
Yep.
that allowed the team to by each task or stories that they will plan to do on that sprint, based on the, let's say, values, or how important or how easy might be to do some of the activities.
Right.
you know I don't know
Yep.
if you want to share.
There are three types of cards that you can use. So this is the standard. The one that I just showed is the standard type. There's the T-shirt type that you can also
the
use.
T-shirt, yeah.
Then instead of numbers, you have sizes. And there's the Fibonacci sequence, which is a
Fibonacci,
Fibonacci is the guy.
I think so.
The guy's name?
I don't know.
Maybe it is. So, but the sequence of the numbers are slightly different than the standard one. There are higher numbers, goes all the way to 144. So depending on the wider the how can I say this? How big is your um, don't know the word, but how big of a story you might have if your stories are bigger than usual. If you have like a product that supposedly have stories that are more complex, maybe the Fibonacci would fit better.
Maybe I would say something that is not really correct, but I think that using such powerful tool as the plenty poker that allow you to use these numbers as metrics to evaluate, how progressive is the team following, uh, based on the sprints they are working through, the iteration zero through iterations at the future, right? Because at the first moment, maybe you won't have a way to estimate how much you can do on a sprint, right? So people might think how hard it will be to use plenty poker on the iteration zero, but you might, try to use. But these numbers will show you how progressive and trends about how was your continuous improving during, from iteration zero to other iterations,
Right.
you know, and based on some stories that are similar in previous sprints, might give you also a good way to understand how things are being moving through the days.
Right. And how you're supposed to evaluate
Evaluate.
the complexity level of a
Mhm.
given user story, right?
Mhm.
All right. Uh, all right. So let's dive right into how we can use it, right?
Mhm.
So let's say we have the iteration backlog, and we will talk about the differences between the sprint backlog or iteration backlog and the product backlog soon.
Mhm.
We have yet to determine the next episodes, but most likely will be one of these two. But basically, the team has the sprint backlog defined, and they will uh, during during the course of an iteration, the product owner will call in a backlog grooming or backlog refinement. The team will look to to the product backlog now to reassess the stories and resize them. So the planning poker helps sizing the stories, which is what we were talking. Nelson was talking just now. So the team together, and this is just for the team. Right? This too is for the team members. Product owner will not participate, right? And the team will assess the complexity level again because the team is the ones that are actually building the product or building the solution for your process improvement, right?
Yeah, so I think that also it is a way to give the team voice, right?
Yeah.
Based on, because maybe sometimes we see that, many product owners might be, at that time with the team, but the team doesn't feel that comfortable to say, what they can do, what they can't. So I
Right.
think that is a good way to, it's not like a silence thing, but it is similar to that,
Yeah.
you will give team the voice to decide what they think about what is more valuable,
Valuable.
valuable. Thank you very much. For something that needs to be built up as a services, as a product, or as
Right.
a software.
Right. It's perfect. Like a self-directed team has to feel comfortable in deciding things together. This
Mhm.
is one of the first things that we are talking about that helps us build that uh, the notion of self-direction.
Mhm.
I totally agree. It's very. So how does it work? So we have a story, and we will read the story. Right. The story is a definition of the particular piece of work to be done. Right. And maybe we can get a specific moment when we're talking about backlog. Maybe we can get a specific moment to explain how you're supposed to build a story, right? The user, as a user, I want or I need, etc., and etc. And we can do that next. But basically, after reading that story, the team silently we will decide the complexity of that particular story, right? Based on the features that are contained within the story. So let's say I see Nelson has his own. He will choose on his own. I'll choose on my own. And then if you use the app, you just click it, and it will go to this this screen that says drag. Everyone puts the cell phone down. So I'll put it here so you can see, and he will choose his and put it upside down. The reason why you're not supposed to show other people is that his opinion might interfere on my decision, on my opinion. So we don't want that, right? Eventually, with time, people will start to get more closely on on sizing. So the votes will become more similar. But especially in the beginning, if I admire Nelson, for example, I want to vote similar to what he's doing. Just an example. It's kind of silly, but it happens. So let's say we have these two votes, so we put it together. If all using the cell phone, it's everyone just someone just clicks on all of them to turn the card on the right size, and he will do the same. So we will look into the table. So his number is 2 and my number is 13. So because of the distance, if you will, of the vote, if there's too many people voting far apart, we can either vote again because now we have seen other people voting. Now we will reassess our, our personal individual vote, but not as an individual, but as a group vote. This is different than what I was talking before.
Yeah,
And then we will vote.
yeah, and sometimes depending on how the teams are together, maybe you can just open for discussions to understand why the number 2 and why the number 13 as an example, because maybe the person that uh, read that card or that story might did not understand that quite good in terms of or
Yeah.
maybe he's busy with other activities, maybe with some other actions or things they need to do, right? That is not clear to the team. So it's pretty important that depending on how close their team are, um, they might be using that time to to explain and justify why 2 and 13,
Yeah.
but not to cause noise, but just to get clear if everybody understood what is being required to do,
Within the story.
hmm
You touched something that reminded me of something very important, which is in the beginning I wasn't quite sure of the reason why backlog grooming was put within the middle or during the iteration and not closer to the iteration planning or even at the time of the iteration planning. And the reason it becomes clear later became clearer that the reason is precisely what you said is they're not focusing on what they're doing now. They're focusing on something they'll do in the future. So whatever work, even if it's a project to improve your process or a specific feature for your product, your software, you're not focusing on that because if we would if we'd be discussing them together, everything we're working on would eventually cause some impact to our decision towards the voting to the next user stories because maybe we are too busy, which is what you were talking about. So that's the reason. The reason why backlog grooming and planning poker is in the middle of the iteration is to not cause any confusions or conflicts of interest with the stories and features being worked on at the time.
and
So it makes sense.
and that part of, because sometimes during the sprint you might realize that you won't be able to attend what is being prioritized. So when you have like the grooming at that moment, you might need to break into 2 features or 2 stories because you won't be able to deliver the 13 because you just realized that something major just happened, or maybe someone gets sick and you couldn't attend the 13 points, right? So you got the grooming that will allow you to break. Maybe you will just do some features from but not the whole card, and then that one will go back to the backlog. So the next iteration, you might prioritize that again, or maybe you will understand that that piece of work doesn't have any value, so you just discard.
Perfect.
So the grooming is perfect when you visualize that you won't be able to attend what is being because sometimes you just expect that you can do it, but you realize that you couldn't. So the grooming give you that opportunity.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
to course correct even.
Yeah.
It's perfect. One more. Yeah.
And I think that maybe you might be thinking yourself, okay, these guys are talking only for develop softwares, but we can also do, as I was talking to Bruno, and Bruno might be able to say that, but we can use the Planning Poker also for operations. How? Continuous improving, Kaizen. You might
we
have
call it Kaizen.
Kaizen. Maybe you can see over operations what are the pain points, and these are major projects or programs that you might also be able to work aside the operations. It's not the operation itself, but it's a continuous improving as a project. So that's why we can see that some teams are saying operations as 80% operations and 20% as projects that allow you to give like a short window also to revisit operations and how you can get better.
Right. And to that point, so it might be confusing at times when you're talking about operations because you have to manage processes and the Kaizen backlog So most of the time, these practices of a Scrum scenario, they will fit better the Kaizen scenario that Nelson described, because process backlogs are refreshed daily, even
or
hourly,
hourly
all
or
the time.
minute.
And it's just it's just all the time. So there's no way for you to plan ahead. So that's the challenge. I think it's the main challenge of applying a Scrum structure to operations is managing two types of backlogs. But I think if you focus on starting applying these techniques and this structure for your Kaizen, then you can start to see improvements to your process in terms of cycle time. And if you in the future we'll be talking about value stream mapping, we will be covering process efficiency percentage, which is pretty much what you have to focus on. So if your process efficiency is 15%, you should be going for 20 and so on. And that's how you get continuous improvement as well. And then as the time goes, you get better at it. You learn Kanban management and all that good stuff. You get better at it, then it will be a lot easier to manage the process intake and throughput in the future. But that's just adding future discussions. But it's all good stuff.
Yeah, man, I just love it when we talk about using such Scrum or some other artifacts or activities or practices. It's just because we can do it even if it is on operations, right?
Yes.
Allow you, because when you use planning poker for operations for continuous improving, maybe numbers might be smaller because they cannot precise when a set one or a major issue might come in. So they will be pretty realistic that we know we're gonna work, like dream big and start small, in terms
Move
of
fast.
and move fast.
Move fast.
That's the reason about using planning poker, because you will learn continuously how to use it and how to apply that in operations in case you will start doing.
Yeah, and then when you're talking about emphasizing that you can use in operations, we saw a video of a guy in India that he applied Agile in his system to better organize his kids' schedules. So his kids are experts on Kanban now, and they move the stickies. It's fantastic. So you can actually implement Sprint in your house for your finances, for your house renovations, for education, vacation, anything. Agile is amazing. Yeah, everyone knows that we're
Bruno will share that
suckers
stories
for Agile.
below.
Last thing I want to share, very important when it comes to planning poker, is that the sizing points
Oh, yeah.
of the planning poker. So you're giving a sizing to your story. That sizing will feed into how many points you delivered in a sprint or in an iteration. So that ultimately will be your velocity. So if we have 3 stories broken down into 10 features, or we have 3 kaizens broken down into 10 features, we have, for example, 70 points, but we delivered 50. So this becomes our velocity. So that's why it's important to really practice planning poker and sizing, because eventually this will give you an orientation on where you want you want to be for the next iteration. So it becomes like a
BHAG.
BHAG, yes. So you delivered 50, we want to deliver 55 on the next iteration, and so on, so that we're delivering again continuous improvement. Actually, how do you get better? How do you get better in delivering features or Kaizen? So that's very important. The velocity is the amount of points you delivered in a sprint or an iteration based on the inputs from the team. And that's eventually will inspire the team to become better.
Yep.
It's
Awesome.
fantastic.
That's why I was mentioning about metrics and trends, because it gives us that opportunity.
Yeah. And today we're testing out the lightning. So feedbacks. So the last episode was a little bit darker. So we're trying out something new that we just found out. So we hope this is better. Let us know.
Alrighty, guys. So see you next week with another topic.
Yep.
Give your like, comments, and share your experiences about watching us.
And if you have never used Planning Poker, why not suggest this to your team? Try that. Focus
Alright.
on that.
Okay,
Give
guys.
it a try.
See you later.
Thank you, guys. Thanks,
Alright.
man.
Welcome.
Cheers.